Now, Ask Dr. Love with psychotherapist, author, love and relationship expert Jamie Turndorf, PhD.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ask Dr. Love Radio. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and it's my pleasure to be with you again today. Today, I have a very exciting show for you. It's an intimate look at frigidity, and I have a guest, a renowned author. Her name is Cris Mazza, and she has a new title. It's a hybrid memoir titled Something Wrong with Her, and it's a memoir about anorgasmia, which is the inability to have an orgasm. And did you know that research suggests that 75% of all women can't reach orgasm through vaginal intercourse, and upwards of 15% are completely anorgasmic. So something wrong with her isn't about overcoming anorgasmia. It's a poignant memoir about a girl who didn't feel the sexual awakening she knew she was supposed to feel, and about a boy who loved her nonetheless. And 30 years later, Cris went back to find that boy, who's now a man, only to discover that he never stopped yearning for her. And sadly, in an attempt to cauterize his feelings for her, he'd sealed himself into an abusive marriage. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Cris Mazza. Cris, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, I was very, very pleased to have you. So, and I understand that you have written, well, in one of your bios it said 16 other titles, and then I saw somewhere 17 other titles. So which is it, 16 or 17?
I think Something Wrong with Her is 17, so some bios say there's 16 others, and some bios say there's 17 total.
Well, I'm going to say 17 because I'm going to count this one in the whole list. So you have authored all kinds of things besides this contemporary sexual memoir. You've authored all kinds of books like Various Men Who Knew Us as Girls, Water Baby, Trickle Down Timeline, Is It Sexual Harassment Yet? How to Leave a Country, that won a Penn Nelson Algren Award for book-length fiction. You've co-edited 3 anthologies, Men Undressed, Women Writers on the Male Sexual Experience, so many books. You're a prolific writer. So this is your first memoir, is that right?
It's actually my second memoir. In 2003, I published a book called Indigenous Growing Up Californian. And that book did begin to touch on this particular issue of my dysfunctional sex life, but it didn't go very far into it. And
right.
So this one, I decided to go back to some material I left out of that one.
And you pull out all the stops, right. Now, you describe your book as a real-time testimony of a couple's reconnection. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, originally the book that I thought I was writing when I began this book was going to be to look back and see if I could figure out why my sex life had been so dysfunctional. And I was looking at the wrong answers, looking at the wrong reasons. And during this time, I happened to get back in touch with this man who was a boy when I knew him, via email, and it was at the time completely separate from writing the book. But because I was working on this book that had a lot of very old memories where I knew him at that time, I would start telling him about the memories I was exploring and what I was writing about. And so he started telling me his memories about the time, and I suddenly realized that he was actually a principal in the story I should be writing. And I changed what I was writing, and he more and more and more was in the book. Our emails are in the book. And I let him read the book in draft, and he would comment on it. I included those in the book. So the book holds the redevelopment of our relationship.
And do you consider yourself a couple now?
Well, yes. After the book was finished, other things had been developing, which I didn't include in the book about what was happening with us. And eventually, I finished writing it in about 2011, and it is now 2013. He moved to Illinois this past summer, and we are together now.
That's lovely. So tell me, you were a young girl when you met him. You were a teenager. How old were you?
I was 16 when I first met him, and so was he. We were in high school together.
And would you say he was your first partner, lover?
I did have a very unfortunate boyfriend before him, but I would definitely say he was my first boyfriend who was also a friend.
So the unfortunate boyfriend was unfortunate because he mistreated you?
In a way he did, yes. This was my very first boyfriend, and he was my first kiss, and he never tried to kiss me again. I always wondered if it was just very disappointing to him. And he never took me on a date. All he ever did was drive me home from school and park his van and play what I can only call now rape games, where he would try to get inside my clothes and say things like, see if you can get out of this one, and pin my arms. And the whole time I was saying to myself, if I tell him I don't like this, I'll lose him. And I was telling myself, oh, I'm supposed to like this. Oh. And that's why I call it unfortunate, because I marked myself right at that moment as something, that there was something wrong with me. I kept saying to myself, there's something wrong with you that you don't like this, because obviously all girls like this.
Yeah, but there was something wrong with him. That should be the next book.
Yes, it definitely should be.
What the F was wrong with him? Because he was like a rapist in training, you know. The guy was just violating you. You know, and it's interesting that you look back on it and say something was wrong with you, that you didn't have a good feeling about it, but he was dehumanizing you. He wasn't treating you as a precious person that he loved, and then it evolves from those feelings into a physical expression, you know, of love and so on. So, you know, I actually, when I first received your email, before I knew anything about you, my first thought was, I had to wonder if somebody really violated you and that you literally shut down your feelings and anesthetized them as a kind of anesthesia, which a lot of people do. Did you consider that was what happened to you?
Well, yes and no, because I consider that my teenage experiences just weren't the kind that are as bad as what seems to should be in place if it's going to cause that. I mean, I'm just saying that I think that my experiences were kind of average, things that many girls go through. Now, maybe many girls don't have a boyfriend like that, who's actually saying, see if you can get out of this one, and never taking me out or kissing me or even holding my hand. And the fact that I put up with that shows, you know, how desperate I was just for the label of having a boyfriend. But I really didn't feel like I had some of the super traumatic experiences that would really cause this kind of thing. And that's where the link in my search for the reason is sort of broken in my mind, that I just, what I did develop from that point or from a variety of things was just a very intense fear of sex. And I will admit, I developed that. I was very afraid of it. I was afraid it would hurt. I was afraid I would be no good at it. I was afraid.
You see, I really do. I don't think that you can pass judgment on yourself and say, oh, this event doesn't justify my reaction, because we all are as unique as fingerprints. And it is amazing how one bad experience can taint us for life. I mean, I have patients who got yelled at once. And out of that one experience, you know, a parent said, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about, and yelled at them. And that one experience was enough for that person to shut down feelings of anger from that point on, and was crippled. So, you know, we all have our degrees of sensitivity, and I myself, you know, I'm not surprised to hear that if that was your first experience, that it would be enough to just absolutely shut you down. I'm not surprised, actually. Not. So, and I don't think there's anything wrong with you. Something was wrong with him.
Well, I will grant that whenever I think about him and how he acted, there was something just dreadfully wrong with him.
Dreadful. Now, yes. I will go a step farther and say that maybe your self-esteem wasn't as strong as it could have been, because you went to that place that so many women go to. What's wrong with me? Women will do this. You know, somebody misbehaves or mistreats you. Well, what's wrong with me? Maybe he didn't like my kiss. Women are, you know, notorious for inserting their egos instead of, stepping back, watching the show and saying, what's wrong with this guy? What is he? A sociopath? Does he have an attachment disorder? I mean, do you see what I'm saying? So you already went to that place of something's wrong with me. I'm not attractive. He didn't want to kiss me. He didn't want to take me out. And then on top of it, that just solidified your feeling something's wrong with me. If you had felt stronger about yourself, I don't think you would have even gone there. You would have just said, this dude is whacked.
Yes, I think you're right. And I think that is the reason that I titled the book Something Wrong with Her,
yes.
Because I'm smart enough now to realize the irony in saying that.
Yeah.
As I went through my college journals, which is another big part of this book, how many times I had written something that either somebody said to me that something was wrong with me or that I was saying it to myself in those journals about a variety of things, but usually having to do with my personal lack of performance, shall we say, in relationships. And so, yeah, I do realize the irony of saying that, but I haven't felt prepared to say I have been victimized. I am like this because I've been victimized. Because in what I've been researching, and of course you know probably way more about this than I do, and I've only done a little research, is that there are other things that can contribute to whether or not a woman is orgasmic. And I have read sex therapists who say that unless a woman learns to masturbate, usually as a teenager, it's going to be very difficult. And that is something I never felt any compulsion to do. I never felt any urges to do that. And it wasn't that I had parents saying that's bad, you don't do that, or a religion. I didn't have a religion saying it either. And so I really don't know why.
You had a very low drive to begin with.
Yes.
But a lot of girls don't have the drive to masturbate until they sort of get awakened, by let's say a good experience with a guy who kind of awakens the sleeping beauty, and then somehow you're like, whoa, I am alive from the waist down. You start experimenting. But the experience with this guy did not give you a jump start to make you want to masturbate or even try. It just sort of put the whole thing to sleep, I had a patient who came to me. She could never I shouldn't say came to me, but she arrived in my office and she could never have an orgasm ever. And as I worked with her, I come from a perspective of that a lot of times when we don't feel, it's a kind of anesthesia that the psyche develops unconsciously to protect us. She was a lesbian actually, and she couldn't have orgasms, never could. And with her, I realized that she was anesthetizing rage. That she was a very angry person, and when she put her anger to sleep, she was like under psychological anesthesia. And when you're under anesthesia, everything's asleep. So in this woman's case, as I helped her get in touch with her rage, suddenly all her feelings came to life and she was able to orgasm. Isn't that interesting how that went? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, that it was really an unconscious defensive armor. Now listen, I'm going to take a brief break. I'm really enjoying talking to you. When I come back, you may not know this, you may not have listened to my show. When I come back, I have a short segment. I call it my quickie segment. How fitting. And when I come back, I'm going to give a little statistics on anorgasmia, and then you and I will talk some more about your story, and I really want to dig deeper into your story and your memoir. So just stay with me, and I'll be back with you in a moment on Ask Dr. Love Radio. Hello again, and welcome back to Ask Dr. Love Radio. I'm Dr. Jamie Turndorf, and I'm talking with my guest, Cris Mazza, author of the memoir, Something's Wrong with Her. And this is my quickie segment, and I just wanted to give you all a couple of statistics on anorgasmia. So if you've ever had trouble climaxing, I just want you to know you're not alone. Because according to Planned Parenthood statistics, as many as 1 in 3 women have trouble reaching orgasm when they have intercourse, and as many as 80% of women have difficulty with orgasm from vaginal intercourse alone. And clitoral stimulation during intercourse can help, of course, but female sexual dysfunction, also known as FSD, which encompasses the inability to orgasm, is a very common problem. As many as 43%, according to some surveys, and can't orgasm at all. And for some women, the latest research shows that topical testosterone and even some oral medications can be helpful. But few medical treatments have solid evidence behind them because FSD may be associated with medical conditions. So thyroid disease, depression, diabetes, or as I was talking about before the break, there are even psychological defense mechanisms that can cause this. So, also 61% of women between the ages of 18 and 24 say that they didn't even have an orgasm the last time that they had sex, and 65% of women in their 30s did, and 70% of women in their 40s and 50s did. So the survey didn't indicate why orgasms come easier with age. That's interesting, that as women get older, it seems to be easier. So we can only assume that women in their 40s or 50s may have more experience knowing their bodies, more confidence in the bedroom, they can enjoy themselves more, they may not be worried about pregnancy, which seems to be linked to helping women have orgasms. So, and also the trust and intimacy that women experience in long-term relationships can actually help them improve their confidence and orgasm as well. But yes, up to 15% never have an orgasm at all. So let me give you a few tweets before I go back to my wonderful guest. So don't fake it when you make it. That's a big way to paint yourself into a sexual corner. And if you can't come, remember you aren't the only one. And if you ever feel like someone's put a hex on your sex, stick with me, because I'm going to give you more facts on FSD. And don't think that you're under a hex, because 75% of women can't get off from vaginal sex. And if you're in a sexual stall, keep remembering 10 to 15% of women can't come at all. And when it comes to hitting the sheets, if you are the one who always retreats, stick with me some more. We'll talk about this. And when someone makes a pass, would you rather take a pass? Well, you may have FSD. And so stick with me, because we're going to talk more with Cris about female sexual dysfunction and Chris's story and her book, Something Wrong with Her. So Cris, talk to me about the subtitle, Sexual Dysfunction. It says in your subtitle the word sexual dysfunction, but then in your own handwriting, you put, you replace the word dysfunction with the word frigidity. So why'd you choose to make the title replace the word dysfunction with frigidity?
Well, frigidity, the word frigid, is so fraught with sexual politics, or basically, it's just so negative. And I have heard that word, but not from any man. I heard it from a woman. And there's a little story in the beginning of the book how this friend of mine was talking about some sort of sexual exploits, or in high school or whatever, and I just said to her, wow, I don't know if I could have ever done that then. And she just quipped, oh, well, you're frigid, meaning it as a joke. And I was just sitting there thinking, yeah, you don't even really know very much about me, but you're kind of hitting a nerve there. And when I used the word in an essay, an editor, a female editor, a very lovely woman who's no longer alive now, argued with me about using it. And she said, you shouldn't use this word. It's what men use to punish women. And I found that very interesting, since I'd only heard it from a woman, but I found that very interesting, and I decided to use it, therefore, for its power, for its ironic power, that this is a situation or a condition that is very punishing, whether you're being punished by men for it or I think by society in general. I feel the punishment. I feel that girls are being taught to value, that their value is in their sexiness from a very early age, and just from the internet chatter and blogs and Facebook and all that stuff, when I see other women, professional women, smart women talking, they exude just an air about that they are hypersexually responsive.
Yes. I want to continue with this point. I have to take a break, but we're going to continue with this hypersexualized image that women present. So let's take a brief break, and we'll be back in a moment on Ask Dr. Love Radio. Hello again, and welcome back to Ask Dr. Love Radio. I'm talking with Cris Mazza about her book, Something Wrong with Her. Right before we took the break, Cris, we were talking about the way that our society seems to champion women who are hypersexualized. That's what you were saying before we left.
Yes, and not only in celebrities and in outrageous, music performances, but, the way the fashion industry works, and girls they're just taught through every fiber of society that their value is in how sexy they are. And then I see it in my peers, women who are smart and professional and accomplished, and they use sexual language, not that I'm, wanting to restrict people's speech, but their language, just in the fiber of their language, indicates that they are also hypersexually responsive. And for example, somebody today posted on Facebook just a little post that I guess she thought would be cute, that she found a thong in the pocket of her jeans that she'd worn all day yesterday at school, and then she put in parentheses, and yes, the thong was mine. And this is just an example of wanting to make sure the world knows how sexual you are. Mm-hmm. And in this kind of culture, people who are anorgasmic, we're sitting there secretly feeling like outsiders. Sometimes we have to play the game, and I was known as a writer who was unafraid to take on sex boldly in my work. I was considered a sex writer, and yet there I was secretly feeling actually like an outsider in this culture. So that's one reason another reason I wanted to write this book, that I just wanted to stop pretending.
Mm-hmm. So you said one of the chapters, you call it "I Write as a Charlatan." So what do you mean when you say that?
Well, that's what I was just referring to. That my books, I was known as a writer who looked unflinchingly, even brutally, at women's sexuality, and it was a minor reputation, and it. One of my first books was called "Is It Sexual Harassment Yet?" and that came out right before the Clarence Thomas hearing. So
there you go.
It got some publicity as such, and so I was known as somebody who could do sexual scenes, and usually did them not romantically, let's put it that way, but that I was brutally honest or sardonic about sex, and yet it was and could do it graphically, and yet I felt like in a way, when critics would write about my work, that I was like a fake.
Mm-hmm. Right. So that took a lot of courage, cojones really, to be able to reveal the truth of yourself, your life. Has it felt like a relief for you?
It probably hasn't quite hit home yet, because the book is just out this month. This is my first major interview, and I'm still feeling things like, should I let my brothers see this book? What about my students? And so there's this thing also built up in us that there's more shame in this than there is in writing a book about how I slept with 100 men before I was 30. Those kinds of books don't seem to carry the same kind of shame, where I'm even wondering, am I going to be able to look my colleagues in the eye at the university where I teach? And why should I be thinking those things?
Right, because to me, women should feel ashamed about the way they degrade themselves, as though they were nothing more than a walking vagina or clitoris, the way they approach men in this way, as though that is all there is to them, their sex appeal. And in fact, the research shows when you ask men find it offensive when women approach them in this way. Women think, oh, this is so great, I'm going to really draw this man to me. Men are offended that women reach out to them in this way. The majority of men don't want to be thought of as just sexual objects that women are trying to grab and nail. Women are so degrading themselves. So to me, what you're doing shows so much integrity and so much honesty. Somebody who's out there, you see now how in the last few years how young girls, young teens are walking around dressing like prostitutes, showing their cleavage, looking like all they have is their sex appeal. It's not about your intellect, your heart, your soul, your emotions. No, it's just your body parts.
Right, yeah, I find that very troubling. What have we
returned to? Yeah, what have we, I don't know that women have ever been. There were times in history, I remember reading some kind of a sociological study that there are certain times in history when we have a backlash. Women have more independence, and then there's a resurgence to more traditional values. Like after the 40s, when women were working, in the war effort, then the 50s became a resurgence of very traditional values. And during these periods of resurgence, women now are showing off their bodies more. They're wearing push-up pointy bras, shorter skirts, high heels, and we have these phases. And now we seem to be in a very oddly traditional phase where it's all about catch the man and how much money does he make and how sexy can I be. And I see young women are not focusing at all on who cares about that. What's in your brain?
Right.
What are you bringing to society? Not what's in your bra, what's in your brain. So why did you feel it was important to reveal the secret of your sexual dysfunction? What was the real impetus for you?
Because I don't think I'm unusual, and I think that there are a lot of us, as you gave the percentages, who probably feel secretly like outsiders, like we're outside of what's happening in real life. And we can only look in and pretend and make comments as though we're experiencing what other people experience. But there was also there's another aspect to my sexual dysfunction that is sometimes not talked about when these percentages are given about women who can't or don't have orgasms.
Right.
That's that I have a condition called vaginismus.
Oh, you have that too. Okay.
Yes, and it's sort of like a two-pronged thing, but it's obviously going to be very related. And going back to when I said when as a teenager I was...
Wait, let's pause, because people who are listening might not know what that condition is, so we need to explain it. It's the involuntary contraction of the lower third of the vagina that makes penetration impossible.
Right. It feels like my vagina is shaped like an hourglass with a steel band around it. And it creates pain when penetration is attempted. My very first pelvic exam was before I was still a virgin. I was probably 21, but I was still a virgin, and I cried. And this crusty old doctor got mad at me. So anything can cause the pain. And when I
you don't have anything else. You don't have interstitial cystitis. You just have this contraction, right? And the pain.
It's been. I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Well, I just want. What I'm really saying is, because this goes back to my original instinctual reaction to your story, and this was before I heard what happened to you, because everything that I know about vaginismus is that it's very much linked to trauma. And you know how I was saying how the psyche shuts us down and numbs us out? Well, the vagina kind of clamps down too when we've had some kind of trauma, and it's like, nobody's going there again, and it literally clamps down. There's a large emotional component to that kind of condition. And you were actually traumatized. You're a sensitive soul, an artistic woman, and it was enough for you to just shut you down, shut down your drive, shut down your body, and that's enough to just end the sexual game for you altogether. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't heal from it, but what you're basically saying is you're saying this is a reality, and there are a lot of women like me, and you're just coming out of the shadows and saying it.
Right, and I'm not sure the connection has been made, like on the vaginismus websites for cures, etc. I'm not sure. They do talk about trauma and that kind of healing, but the connection to anorgasmia is just even when you are quote unquote healed, that connection hasn't been made. And while it's true that my early experiences shut me down, I helped in that process by obsessing over my fear for years. And so that even now, I am in my 50s, I'm no longer intellectually afraid of sex, and I still have it. My body just has this response that I can't seem to help. And
well, you know that these are the cases where, over the years we've discovered that talking therapy may have limitations with certain traumatic reactions like this. And then there are all these energy medicine techniques, the NET, the EFT, the NAET, body talk, where there's actually like a cellular trauma that's in the cells of your body. It's a cellular memory. And people have had a lot of success with releasing these kinds of experiences that are still held in the body, where you're holding tightness in the vagina or anywhere. And these are the ways that we sort of get through things where you can't talk your way out of it. So even though your intellect says, I'm not afraid anymore, I love my partner, he's sweet, we have an emotional connection, still the body is because it's still holding the memory of the trauma.
Yes, that.
So it might be something for you to consider, and anyone else who's listening, if, you wish to explore further, just because, you might wish to, open yourself up to a possible healing. But because, I'm always of the persuasion that we're like trees. We always want to keep growing, keep on moving past whatever impediments we've got. And, I think it was Padre Pio. Yes, Padre Pio. His whole life he was praying for a healing. He was covered in sores all over his body, agonizing sores, but he never stopped trying to keep growing like that tree. His whole life aspiring and reaching, and on his deathbed, the sores, I said whores, talk about a Freudian slip, right? the sores just spontaneously healed right in front of everyone's eyes. So we just keep on questing, and we don't understand fully the struggles and the challenges, but we just keep on trying to grow and moving spiritually, emotionally, energetically. So I hope that you will, even as you're so brave to talk about this, that it isn't necessarily going to be for the rest of your life. There are all kinds of miracles that happen, and that's a possibility. So do you consider yourself asexual, sexually anorexic? How do you think of yourself?
Well, I don't know if being asexual is something you're born with, and so I wouldn't be able to categorize myself there. Even though I have felt that my earliest, in my adolescence, I didn't feel what they call those raging hormones. I kept wondering, where are mine? Why don't I crave this like all my friends seem to? But I don't know if they were just talking, saying the things they were supposed to say. But asexuality, I think, can be an acquired pattern, and that is this vicious cycle of pain and fear, and therefore avoidance, and therefore it becomes a pattern to just avoid sex. And I don't think people who truly believe to themselves to be asexual are actually sex avoiders. They just don't feel any drive to have it. They don't feel the importance of it. And I have gone through periods of my life when I definitely feel that way. But I haven't been able to categorize myself in any way except dysfunctional, that I'm just hampered by either the mistakes or the experiences or whatever the things are that I haven't been able to undo. My writing this book was a first big step toward trying to undo some of this, and I'll tell you, I did do another type of therapy, which again is very rarely linked to this, although urologists know about it, and that is I went through pelvic floor therapy.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And
it's quite an experience, as you probably know. It takes about 8 weeks of weekly going in to a specialized nurse practitioner who's trained, and you have a probe put in your vagina so that you can see what's happening in there. You can see what the muscles are doing, and you have to learn to control the pelvic floor muscles and don't confuse them with your stomach muscles. So you have 2 screens where you're seeing your stomach muscles and your pelvic floor muscles, and I was learning to control them, because I guess this is therapy that's used for incontinence. And of course, you know that if you're not controlling your pelvic floor muscles, you might be incontinent. I have never been incontinent. I seem to have the opposite problem. So it also can control them, can control the spasms. I was seeing the spasms on the screen. And
were you able to control it?
I was able to control it, and did take care of the vaginismus for a while. And the problem is that doing the Kegel exercises is something that many people, and I admit to be at fault here, are unable to make themselves continue doing. During the therapy, I was just very good about always doing my Kegel exercises every day. Kegel exercises are tightening of those pelvic floor muscles. And if people want to know how to do that, it's just how do you stop urinating in the middle of a stream? Those are the muscles.
Right, and you just pretend that you're letting the urine stream flow freely and then pretending like you're holding back a stream. And you just do it back and forth, back and forth. Don't do it too much because you can get a crotch cramp, or like a little sore muscle. Let me take a brief break on the crotch cramp point. Say that 3 times fast. I'll be back with you in a moment on Ask Dr. Love Radio. Hello again and welcome back to Ask Dr. Love Radio. I'm talking about female sexual dysfunction, and I'm with my guest, Cris Mazza, who wrote Something Wrong with Her. And right before we left, we were talking about the Kegel exercises, and you were saying that, if I understood, that you were actually able to learn how to control those involuntary spasms of the lower third of the vagina, but that once you got out of the doctor's office, it was hard for you to maintain the discipline of doing these exercises. That's what you were saying? I maintained my daily exercises for the period of 8 weeks, or it was actually more like 12 weeks I went to her. For that 12 weeks, I maintained my exercises, and then for a long period afterwards, I was able to maintain my exercises. And then, life sort of starts to roll, and you forget one day, and you forget 2 days, and then, it got to be where I was only doing them sporadically. And then something else horrible that happens to every woman happened. I went through menopause. Hey.
Right. And so what was added to my plate was what every woman has to go through is dryness. And as soon as dryness presented a problem with pain during intercourse, the vaginismus came right back.
It came back. So you were able to get behind it with the exercises, which is great. But then the dryness was yet another hump in the road. Right. I'll say a hump in the road to getting humped, or humping. No. Right. So that really, really threw you a curveball. So now, did you do anything about the dryness? Well,
only what you can do with over-the-counter products. I haven't done a lot of experimentation with. I know that there's products that I've heard of that gynecologists have been developing that can help with the dryness and supposedly revitalize the vagina facility.
I'll tell you what, because I know a lot about this, that when women use estriol, not estradiol, estriol vaginal cream, from what I understand, there is no systemic absorption, so we don't have to worry about the buildup of estrogen. If you do the bioidentical also, that women who have the vaginal dryness, this corrects it for them practically immediately, because it plumps up the tissue, it's not dry, and they're back in business.
So is this a prescription product?
What you would do is you would have your gynecologist write a prescription, and you would get it from a compounding pharmacist.
Okay, and where is it applied?
Well, you put it in the vagina. You would use it's a little like a little tube dispenser, like when women get a yeast infection,
right, yeah.
and they use that little tube dispenser. They screw it onto the tube of the medicine, and then they shoot it in the vagina. Same thing. And the amount that you put in is, based upon whatever your levels are, because what a lot of people will do is they'll actually do salivary hormone testing to take a look at your entire hormone profile, because I would bet for somebody like you who's always had so low sex drive that your testosterone has always been very low. We find this in women who have felt asexual from the time they were young. And so that may be also a piece. So that very often what they'll do, in addition to for women who are suffering greatly in menopause, is they'll use bioidentical progesterone cream. And the beauty of progesterone is it's a precursor to all the other hormones, including testosterone, so that it actually increases your drive just by elevating your natural testosterone, because women need to have it too.
Yeah.
But the estriol, just in the vagina, you will not be dry anymore. And what I'm so excited about in hearing your story is that you really actually mastered the vaginismus with those exercises, but then you got the curveball with But isn't this just the way life is? Here you are drowning, right? And then you think you found high ground, and then another wave knocks you down in the water. This is really a metaphor of life. It really is. It's like, here we go again. We have to start.
Right when I'm, starting this new relationship as well, old relationship, with this man that I knew as a boy, and I have to say that in this kind of situation, having somebody who you can talk to about it, who he sat there with me and counted for me with my Kegel exercises, and he will want to hear about this cream, and he's just I want you to stay in touch with me because we are old friends now, and I want you to promise you stay in touch with me because I want to hear, because I know this is going to make a difference for you, and I actually think that you're going to be okay. I think you're going to be able to really reclaim, this part of your body. I really do. So now tell me something else. This question really has been sticking with me. Was there a moment and an episode that you think if it had gone differently, you might have had a more normal sexualization? Do you think it was the event with that boy that really turned the corner for you, or was there something that happened to you after that? Was it an accumulation? Well, yes, because the story does get more complicated with the next boy, who is the man I'm with now, was quote unquote the next boy. And this is where I have trouble, separating out my response from what really happened. He was a boy. He was 18. And he was feeling pressure from his friends for how he was supposed to act and how he was supposed to feel. And so even, our very first date, he was so sweet and kissed me on the forehead and held me, and I felt very safe. And then, after that, there was everyone's rite of passage at the drive-in movies. And it's not as though he did not force me to do anything. There was no forcing. There was me telling myself I'm supposed to like this, and it was just, that sweaty wrestle on the front seat of the car where,
But there wasn't the foreplay that would have helped you,
Well, there was no, it didn't result in sex, and my clothes didn't even come off. His did, but mine didn't.
So
he was not
you're saying
forcing me to
with
do
this
anything.
guy that you're with now, you're saying your first experience with him in the drive-in, you had intercourse?
No, there was no intercourse.
There was no intercourse.
I was a virgin until I was 24.
Okay, but it was a one-sided deal with him where you're saying you just gave him pleasure. That's what you're saying?
No, I didn't. I didn't do that either. I was pretty. There was the regular making out, which I didn't enjoy, but I made myself do it, and then his shirt came off, his pants were undone, that sort of thing. But he didn't force me to take my clothes off. There was no coercion or no force on his part. But there was what kids would just call making out, or making out that goes into petting, and I did not like it, and I did not think it was his fault I didn't like it. I just felt like I didn't like it. Now, maybe that was because of the previous guy.
It was not a good experience.
It was not a good experience. But, who's going to have a good experience?
But it wasn't a good experience before, and you didn't have any nice associations. How is it with you guys now on a physical base? Because he sounds like a great guy, and you have the perfect openness with him that is so necessary, as we go forward, in your journey with him. You can talk to him about everything. You can talk to him about your difficulties. You can talk to him about your exercises. We're going to talk to him about the estriol cream. But do you hold each other? Do you kiss? Do you have a physical life? Do you give him pleasure? How does that go for you?
We are very physically affectionate. And our sex life is, other than the fact that I'm anorgasmic, which bothers him greatly that he can't give me that or hasn't been able to, but we do have an active sex life as well. And he and I also explored our past through the writing of this book. That's what's contained in our emails in the book. We were exploring and going over our past and trying to figure out what went wrong. He feels that his behavior in high school was a big betrayal of me, and that's how he lost me and lost 30 years of being with me. And this has been something that's hard for him to deal with. And I want to help him with that because an 18-year-old boy has...
He did the best he could.
Yes, he did the best he could, and they have pressures of their own of how they're supposed to be, the quote-unquote man they're supposed to be.
Oh,
and so we've had to work through our past as well.
It's a beautiful relationship, and he sounds like a really wonderful man. He's the perfect partner for you to, help you work this through. By the way, I forgot to ask you, because a lot of women who are anorgasmic are able to orgasm with a vibrator. Have you tried that?
I have tried that, and I have not been able to. Okay. I was seeing a therapist 3 or 4 years ago, and it wasn't necessarily, she wasn't a specialist in sex therapy, but she wanted me to get the vibrator, so I did, and I experimented with it. And I always felt like it was sort of an assignment, and I was, the pressure to succeed.
That's enough to make
really
you not come.
Yes.
That's totally enough to make you not come. I mean, I'm thinking because you have such a beautiful relationship with him, maybe if he played with you with the vibrator, that would be a helpful thing. Now, I have so much respect and admiration for you and your courage, your honesty to write this book, to come out of the shadows, to be a voice for all the women who are really suffering in silence. I encourage everyone to read your book. Tell everyone now how they can get a hold of your book. Your website. Tell us everything.
Okay. Of course, those are things I don't have memorized.
All right. I can help you because I have it written down. Okay. It's, first of all, your website, of course, is Cris Mazza, Mazza.com, right? And, I saw that your website for the book is at jadedbizproductions.com. Jaded is JADEDIBIS productions.com/something in capital letters .html. So that looks, is that the page for the book itself?
I believe that's been changed. I'm looking at it right now. It's JADEDIBIS, and that's Jaded Ibis, like the flower ibis. Jaded Ibis Productions. So JADEDIBIS PRODUCTIONS.com, and then it's /Cris-Mazza /. And that will get to the book page where there is a pre-order link because it's still in press. This is brand new. It's still in press. And so there's a pre-order link right there. And with the book, for every book that's sold, we are giving a link, a free music download to a jazz suite, which I had commissioned to go with this book, and my partner, Mark, is the saxophonist on the jazz suite. So he gets to speak in the book and in the music.
I am so glad that you came on my show. I have thoroughly enjoyed you. Is there anything else you would like to share before we wrap? Anything?
Well, only that the writing the book was a journey. Now talking about it the journey is just continuing. I think that answers come in piecemeal along the way, and so I still feel like I'm in the process of doing the learning that I was doing writing the book. And so I hope people will continue the process with me.
Absolutely. And promise you will keep in touch with me. Let me know how you do, and I'd love to have you back.
Oh, thank you. I would love to come back. Yes, I'll keep in touch.
Good. Wonderful. So that's all I have for you today on Ask Dr. Love Radio. Have a good week, and I'll see you next time.